Welcome back to Nothing But Nets. I'm joined with my co-host here, John, Everything BK Nets. John, going to get into a lot of things today. Some news from the Nets, some good stuff, I guess. Also, are they going to go star hunting? There's a lot to get into. John, introduce yourself, tell everyone where they can find you, and then let's get started.
Gary, always fun to talk good basketball with you. Yes, a lot of stuff to get into today. We're going to try to get you all the best coverage we can. If you ever want to talk fun basketball with me, you can follow me on my Twitter at OS90413John. Yeah, we are in the last stretch of the season, so there's definitely a lot to figure out about this team, which their direction could be anywhere at this point. So we'll definitely get into it today and try to provide some clarity on what's been a lack of clarity for a good chunk of the season.
All right, let's start with let me get it pulled up. But Tyrese Martin. The Nets are expected to give Tyrese Martin a standard contract, according to Brian Lewis of the New York Post. Let me get you start your thoughts so far on Tyrese Martin as a player, and your thoughts on them giving him a standard contract.
Yeah, I mean Tyrese has been working hard this year to try to break through. He had that big 31-point performance against the Suns early this season, and before that, his career points were like 30 something. So he burst onto scene with that, and ever since then, he's kind of been like a steady Eddie. He hasn't given you like crazy performances, but he's tried to contribute every game he's played. And this season, Jordy's rewarding the hard work, the stuff behind the scenes, and he's seen Tyrese put a lot of work into it, so it made sense to promote him from a two-way to a standard. I know Tucson's trying to do that too, but he's under a 2-year two-way, so he has another year for them to decide that. So it just made logical sense for Martin to get the upgrade. I will say this, though, Killian Hayes, who knows where his direction lies, because now that roster spot is full, hard to see room for Killian to get called up at the moment now.
Well, we got some breaking news, John. We got some breaking news. I did not think this was going to happen, but look what it is. According to Shams, the Brooklyn Nets are finalizing a 10-day contract with former number 7 overall pick Killian Hayes. Agent,
wow!
I'm not even going to try to say that name. Hayes went to training camp in Brooklyn and has played for the Nets Long Island NBA G League affiliate, averaging 21-8. He's played well. He's dominated the G League, which is what you want. The Nets are also waiving forward Bojan Bogdanovic, sources said, freeing up 2 roster spots to sign Hayes and two-way guard Tyrese Martin to standard contracts.
Wow.
So that just broke now. Your thoughts on all that?
Great breaking news. I was wondering what was going to happen with Bogdanovic, but thankfully he's been waived. Now you have a chance for a young upstart like Killian Hayes, who's been scratching, clawing, itching his way from the G League in Long Island to come up to this team. So well earned on his part, especially given how bad his career went with the Pistons, being former lottery picks. Now he has a new lease on life, and now he gets a legit opportunity the last few weeks of this season to work and try to get a role in this team. So I'm glad he got. Was it a 10-day? I wish it was a standard, but 10-day. Let's see what he can do with those 10 days. And glad Martin's got his contract. So now it seems the Nets are moving these puzzle pieces around, and maybe there's another move to be made. We'll see, but it's good that Killian Hayes is getting called up to try to earn a spot on this team. And I just think, guys, Bogdanovic's now off this team. He wasn't going to do much for us. I'm still like a little surprised that the Nets, they've been so lack of transparent on medical records. We heard nothing about Bogdanovic needing foot season surgery. We heard rumors from Nets Kingdom in December. He was ramping up to potentially play, and then maybe we flip him or buy him out. So I'm glad that this was addressed very quickly, nipped in the butt, and Killian Hayes now has a chance to earn a role in Brooklyn. So let's see what he can do.
Yes, I got a couple of thoughts. Look, I have no problem calling up Hayes. We'll get to Hayes in a minute. I like giving Tyrese Martin a standard contract. To me, Tyrese Martin looks more like an NBA rotational guy, a guy that you can plug and play in an NBA rotation, more so than Keon Johnson and more so than Jalen Wilson, to me. Like, he deserves more minutes than those guys. He deserves more burn than those guys. He can shoot. Pretty good athlete. I like Tyrese Martin to a degree. Like, I think he'll be in the NBA. I don't know if I can say the same for Jalen Wilson and Keon Johnson. I don't know if those are NBA players. I think Tyrese Martin is. So I like the Tyrese Martin move. I have no problem with the Killian Hayes move. We've talked about this a lot. We knew this was probably coming at some point. He's dominated the G League. I thought initially that he was going to get this last roster spot that they gave the two-way to. But look, Killian Hayes isn't eligible for a two-way, right? or is he?
No. I think he's been
He's
in the league
not.
4
He's been in the
years.
league too
So
long. Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We saw this coming. I wish Dylan was here because Dylan's been all about pulling him up. To me, I have no problem with this, and he's obviously better than Reese Beekman. Like I said, Reese Beekman on his best day, if Reese Beekman develops him perfectly, and we get exactly what we want out of Reese Beekman, he's an undersized Killian Hayes, right? Like that's his ceiling. I've seen enough of Reese Beekman. I've seen enough.
We're over the Beekman era, but
Yeah,
I'll say this too. He also got sent down to Long Island today in a corresponding move. So let's see what Killian does in these 10 days. And I would say Beekman needs to work on the offensive game, whereas Hayes has worked on the offensive game. Now we can see if the growth in Long Island has led to some type of transformation. So we'll see how that all irons out. I will say this though: what happens to Reek Whitehead now? Seems like him and Hayes are now competing.
I want to get that. I want to address those two things. Hang on, pause that for a second. So I want to address this comment first. BTB says bring up Dr. Drew, and he's talking about Drew Timmy. I would imagine.
Yeah,
that's what I would have done. The Nets need bigs. They have plenty of guards. Also, to me, guys, I'm not saying Killian Hayes can't be an NBA backup point guard, but there's not much upside in him. He can't score. He is what he is. He can't shoot. I'm not saying there's no role for him in the NBA. Maybe there could be, but we already know what he is. There's not much upside to me in Killian Hayes. I don't know anything about Drew Timmy other than he was dominant in high school and college. We've not seen him at the NBA level. So why bring up Killian Hayes, who we've seen for 4 years, plenty of minutes? It's not like he hasn't gotten a shot. Why bring up Killian Hayes instead of Drew Timmy?
I think because Hayes has been here longer than Timmy right now, and they want to see what he wants to do. But I will say this now: you could call up Drew Timmy, but you would have to get D'Anthony Melton to agree to a buyout, and he's out for the season. But he probably wants to collect his money, so that's another situation. Marks and Joe are gonna have to negotiate. But if there's a buyout with D'Anthony Melton, I could see Drew Timmy get called up to be that third string with Dayron and Claxton. But that's one of the last things I'm waiting to see happen right now. So be interested to see how that all gets ironed out. But Timmy, from what I've heard, he's doing really well in the G League, and some people want to see him get called up to see what he can do, especially with Dayron's future. We don't know what's going to happen with him this summer. He's a free agent, so it'll be interesting to see if they buy out Melton, which could lead potentially to Drew getting called up.
Shake Milton's on the Lakers.
D'Anthony Melton.
Oh, you can't buy out D'Anthony Melton because he's injured.
Right, and then D'Lo, he's not going anywhere. So unfortunately, Drew Timmy has those two roadblocks.
You could buy out. I don't think Sean Marks wants to. You could buy out. So in order for it to be a buyout, I'm just going to use hypothetical numbers here. Let's say the Nets owe you $2 million left on your contract. I'm just making up numbers.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to buy you out for short of that, like $1.5 million, and then you can then go explore getting signed by another team to make up that $500,000 and potentially more, right? Which is what happened with Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons agreed to a buyout because he knew he had other suitors in the Clippers and other teams. So, okay, you give me short money, and then I'll sign a minimum contract with the Clippers, and I'll make as much money or more. You can't buy out D'Anthony Melton because he's hurt for the year. So he's not going to take short money, and no one else is going to want to pay him for the remainder of the season because he's hurt. Right? So you can't buy out D'Angelo Russell. I would imagine if you bought him out, someone else may want to pick him up. I don't know that for sure. And we got LBL. I don't know. He's a horrible postseason player, but he does add value. He helps you win. As you've seen with the Nets, he creates offense. I would think that if you would agree with me that D'Angelo Russell is going to be on an NBA roster next year, right? Like his career's not over, right? So that means that someone's interested in him. But is a playoff team going to take a chance on D'Angelo Russell, given how bad he's played in the postseason?
I don't see it right now. Maybe there's a team, maybe like a Pistons who lost Ivy. I think he's on the mend, but
that's
I don't
the one
see
I
any
keep
options
looking at is the Pistons. Yeah,
Pistons might make sense. I would say this. So you brought up Killian Hayes and how he hasn't really developed a lot since he came into the league. He has a chance now. I would say this. It would make logical sense for Hayes in a rebuilding scenario if we were doing this properly for Hayes to be the backup and we draft a point guard of the future. Because Hayes doesn't give you much on offense, but he can facilitate, and he could be a young backup to whoever is the future. That makes more sense than keeping D'Lo on this team past this year. But Sean Marks likes to go back into the past. Why can't we just move towards the future and have a guy like Hayes who's not going to impact you a lot offensively, but he fits the tank timeline and he knows what he can give you, and you could get a point guard of the future. That all makes way better sense than having D'Lo on the team. But just like you said, if he gets bought out, will anybody want him? Who knows? But he's on this team right now, and he's leading us towards a play-in, which doesn't help us get a top pick. So it feels like we're working ass backwards, and that's a problem.
Our boy Nets press Dylan working overtime while he's at his office job. The Brooklyn Nets have waived Bogdanovich and signing Tyrese Martin to a standard multi-year deal and signing former top 10 pick Killian Hayes to a 10-day contract. Now, Killian Hayes is they can give him 2 10-day contracts. So we're going to get to see some Killian Hayes. LBL is here. I want to get to LBL here. I want to get his thoughts on this. LBL, couple of things. Tyrese Martin getting a standard contract and Killian Hayes getting a 10-day. Give me your thoughts on both of those things.
Yeah. Hey, guys. What's going on? Yeah, I was just trying to type that in the thing because my guy Ken Young, another Nets fan who's in a southwestern state, he just did the same thing. Said, we just signed Killian to a 10-day. So I'm all for it,
Let me ask you this. Okay.
And then, who was the other person you said?
Tyrese Martin is getting a standard contract. From the two-way, he's being upgraded to a standard contract.
I think that's good for him because, he's shown that he can shoot. And, eventually maybe there'll be a job for him in the NBA with some team. But I hope that it's not us because I hope that we have more talented players than him,
Well, let me ask you that, right? So, okay. To me, this year is a year where you find out who belongs on an NBA roster. To me, Tyrese Martin belongs on an NBA roster. Now, how much burn is he going to get? I don't know, but he looks to be an NBA player. You just say you hope he's not here. Why is that?
Yeah, because over the Sean Marks period, and I know you love hearing that phrase.
Oh, I love me some Sean Marks, that's for sure.
Yeah, but over that thing, it's like we tend to sign all of these guys who are like one-dimensional so often that I'd like us to move away from that. And usually when they're one-dimensional, they're not one-dimensional skilled with athleticism. They're just one-dimensional guys, like guys that you would see on the street that may not even out-jump us or outrun us, but it's like, but they could shoot, or but he can pass. Or whatever.
It's like a 90s mentality. Like no shade at guys like Trent Tucker or Steve Kerr. But Trent Tucker and Steve Kerr could not play in the NBA in 2020, right? Because in 2025, because they only have one skill, and there's plenty of guys that have that skill. And you're kind of right. The Nets go after guys,
but you know what, and I'm going to push back a little on that because what is a big difference from those guys. Because and the NBA has evolved in different ways. But one thing about Trent Tucker was he was a star at the University of Minnesota. Steve Kerr was a star at Arizona.
He was. That was a great team. He played with Elliott and Kenny Lofton. That was a great team he played on. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like it wasn't like, but see, nowadays when guys get signed, sometimes they're signing guys who only scored 11 points in college, but they can shoot. So it's a lot different because all they do is specialize in what they were good at and they ignore everything else. So I would say that Steve Kerr has a better chance of being, a better player than, say, a Steve Novak or someone like that,
Well, see, look, I don't know that Novak could probably be in the NBA today, right? Because he's 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah.
Steve Kerr was 6'1", 170 pounds, and he's not really a point guard. He's just a shooter, right? Like, he can create his own shot a little bit, but if you kind of comped him out, Nick Stauskas, but smaller, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's the kind of player that he was. Is there room in the NBA? Like, here's my point. At this point, Seth Curry is a marginal NBA player at this point in his career. He's way better a shot creator than Steve Kerr ever was. That's my point. Would you
But
agree with that?
uh, yeah, he is, but he didn't really bring anything else. So yeah, Seth Curry, he's definitely a better athlete than
Steve Kerr.
Steve Kerr. But it does say something when you get the experience of being a 3 or 4 year starter in college and you actually are playing against people. So I
Remember
think
when that was a plus? Remember when teams used to look, GMs used to look at that and be like, oh, wow, he played 3 or 4 years at college, so he knows how to play ball. He understands best. Now,
and that's
yeah.
part of my argument with I remember I was watching a recent Gills Arena and they were laughing at Anthony Edwards because he was complaining publicly about double teams and everything, and it's like we've reached an age where a guy is complaining because he's a star and he's getting double teamed, and you don't know how to play out of a double team. That, see, to me, that shows a lack of basketball knowledge.
It
That's
reminds me, there was a first baseman that used to play for the Yankees and the Cardinals. His name was Jack Clark. And he
I
played the
remember Jack
Cardinals.
Clark.
He
Yeah.
played for the Cardinals. And then he went to the American League and he complained that they wouldn't throw him fastballs and they kept getting him out with curveballs. It's like, well, yeah. He's
And
like,
he was
yeah,
vicious
why are you
on
throwing
St.
him
Louis.
fastball?
On
Well,
St. Louis, he was vicious, an MVP
yeah,
candidate. Yeah.
they would throw him the fastball and he could hit the fastball. He got to the American League and
Well,
he was complaining that all he did was throw him curveballs. Like, yeah, because you can't hit it.
well, didn't a recent first baseman also say that? Like
Someone else.
when they did the shift, maybe it
Yeah,
was
yeah.
when they did the shift, and he said, "Oh man, that's not fair."
Yeah, Mike Piazza was asked about the shift. It's like, I would just hit 450 every year if they shifted me. Like, I don't care, shift me. I'll just hit it the other way. But yeah, like Anthony Edwards, if they're double teaming you all the time, that means someone's open. Like, make the right like when you look at even peak LeBron with Cleveland,
And what they were, and I think what they were saying was that it shows a lack of imagination by the coaching too, because you have
that's true
to,
too.
you have
Yeah.
to, you have to practice. You have to throw double teams at him in practice to show that what he should do next or how he should get away with it. And he said, like, individual. This is Gil talking. He said individual players like himself or Kobe or Jordan or whoever, he said they loved double teams because that meant that they knew either they were going to be able to still get their shot off or they were going to eventually find the open man, even if it's a hockey pass.
Yeah. And yeah, that tells me that it's a lack of creativity from the coaching staff. And it's also like low basketball IQ to a degree on Anthony Edwards' part. Like I said, LeBron James, not with Cleveland, not with Miami. Was he ever one of the most blitz players in the NBA? Never. He was in the top 10 like once. LeBron. Why? Because you can't blitz him because he's going to make the right read and he's going to kill you with the pass. So Anthony Edwards, why don't you work on that? If they're going to constantly double team you, make them not do that. If they're going to constantly blitz you on the pick and roll, make them not do that. Right? Like, you're that good of a player. You're that talented of a player. But why don't you expand your game?
And that's something that recently that I got in with the guy on Twitter, the Clowney Muse, the Nets Clowney Muse guy.
Yeah.
We were talking about Derek Queen and we were talking about bigs, and he was saying like, yeah, but so many bigs now turn out to be failures. And I reminded him, look, we've had a lot of guys who were wings that are also failures as well. So, because we can say Joshua Jackson and Markelle Fultz and guys, like there are a lot of guys that weren't just bigs. But I said the problem is that coaches, in my opinion, the problem is coaches are too resistant to teach inside out ball or to teach post ball. So because of that, these guys are growing up. They're being 15 and being 6'9", and they're never learning how to play in the post. And so when they get to the NBA, they don't have a lot of coaching, and they're still not. And that's why these guys, like, I think I mentioned this before to John, that sometimes it's not even Claxton's fault. Sometimes it's not even Dayron's fault because they don't allow them to play. They don't allow them to use their size as an advantage.
I would say 50-50 though with more with Claxton, just because he used to do all this in college. It wasn't like he just lost all this, but he's definitely kind of gone away from what could have made him a balanced player. I look back at the highlights when he had the big three. This guy was doing a lot of things he used to do in college, but you take that away, he's now just doing the same things. But
Right?
if you
It
have no
seemed
star
like
talent, you have to
forever ago he
invest.
was that star
Yeah.
in Georgia. Like, that seems like a different lifetime ago. It's like, what happened to that guy?
Right. And he's 25, going to be 26. So if we don't get a starter pair with Claxton, send him to a team like the Lakers and try to get a new center. Derek Queen, he's a combo big. He could be a center, but he could also offensively be powerful. We don't have a combo big on this team right now. We have, limited bigs right now. We need to get away from that. We need to get a big that could do many different things on the court offensively and doesn't need a point guard to do most of their work for him. I think that's a huge disservice
Which
to our
brings me to
starting
my
lineup.
next point, right? Like, we need a
Mhm.
big. Drew Timmy is a big. Killian Hayes is not. We have plenty of guards. I don't see a ton of upside in Killian Hayes. Not that he's horrible. As a non-scoring point guard myself, I understand the value of a pass first point guard can create. I'm not totally disrespecting Killian Hayes, but we need a big, especially if we want to move Claxton in the offseason. Why
Mhm.
not give Drew Timmy the 10-day contract instead of Killian Hayes?
If
LBL. Let me start with LBL.
And I'm gonna tell you, for me, I saw him play at Gonzaga.
Yeah.
He's a smarter player than either center that we got. He's a cerebral guy. He knows how to play. So even if he can't get his shot off, he's gonna make the right pass and do what he can, and he's gonna make the right pick, and so that we score. So I definitely he's limited athletically and even height wise because he's probably closer to 6'9", like Sharp, and he can't jump. So but he definitely deserves a shot to see what he has.
I agree. I'd rather give Timmy a shot. If he sucks, he sucks. Who cares? Like, ultimately, it doesn't matter, right? But at least give it a shot. I understand Sean Marks hates bigs. Like, if you're a big, Sean Marks wants nothing to do with you, which makes no sense. It is what it is at this point, right?
And one more thing, I just want to say, because you know what's so funny, because I remember sitting in those stands in section 114 of the original block, and I remember when we signed Okafor, so many Nets fans were arguing with me that, oh well, his game is passe. It's a relic game. He's a dinosaur. His game doesn't fit. And then the funny thing is, you look at Queen, and it's the same freaking game as Okafor played at Duke.
I never thought Okafor got a fair shot. Like, Okafor had some game. I felt like you could, like, he averaged a 17. Like, Okafor had post moves and he could score. Yeah, he was. I want to address two comments here. John, I want to get back to you with the Drew Timmy question, but BTB says, ain't Queen defense kind of bad? Your thoughts on Queen as a defensive player? He is undersized 5. Is he going to guard 5s? Can he guard 5s? And can he guard quick 4s? Is he kind of like, go ahead.
I think the great thing is he does have things to work on. Defensively, that's something he could definitely work on. I think the great thing about our coaching staff is the defensive identity has already started to blossom. You get a guy like him who could offensively play two sides of the ball at the 4 or the 5. You work on that defense, he's going to be a top 5 breakout prospect. And Queen has a lot in his bag. He can do a mid-range shot. If he could get a 3-point shot, whoa, sky's the limit. And we need somebody like that. We need somebody that can self-create. And he's been a great rebounder too this year. Like, he has a lot in his bag. I hope if we somehow draft him, they just don't take that away from him. If you take away all what Queen is doing right now, we're kind of just revolving the same damn door with doing what we're doing with Davon Claxton.
I'm not saying he's better than Ace and Harper. I'm just saying in that Rutgers game, the Maryland Rutgers game, it did look like Queen was the best player on the court at times, did it not?
It really did. And I think people need to look at the fact that this guy could potentially be a top 5 breakout prospect. Everybody's looking at these Kasparuses and all these other guys. I'm like, people got to look at Queen. He's been steady and going up the ladder these last few weeks. And if we get him, our big of the future could really push us forward, especially if you get a star or somebody. You need a legit big that offensively can dominate. And this guy, with more seasoning and work on the defensive side, could be a really solid big in the future. We need something like that. We're stuck right now with 2 bigs that really can't accelerate their games in the timeline we have right now. So if we have a shot to draft them, grade, but he's definitely going to be sought after by a lot of different teams that need a big right now.
Let me bring the Killian Hayes question to you, John. Killian Hayes, Drew Timme. I'd rather. I don't hate this. Like, I'm not like pissed off about it. But if it was my choice, I'd have given the 10-day contract to Timme. Right? Your thoughts on it going to Killian Hayes over the big that we need in Timme? Like, we don't need another guard. We need a big.
If we didn't have D'Lo on this team, Timme would be here right now, no questions asked. Killian Hayes, he should be here 2 months ago. Like, this D'Lo move never made any sense, and now this is the ramifications of it. A guy like Timme, who does fit a need, like you're saying, Gary, can't get called up because now we have to keep D'Lo for this play-in mirage we're trying to do right now. This is why I have such a problem with this organization. If you would have bought out D'Lo or Maxwell Lewis, a kid who's not doing much, you could call it Timme, but you don't want to get rid of Lewis because he's a young kid on a rebuilding team, fits that. But D'Lo doesn't fit our current timeline. But this organization now wants him because they want to sell tickets. So it's just this is on the organization's part. Drew Timme should be up here, but they want to keep D'Lo for whatever damn reason. And I feel like that ass backwardness is what's hurting us right now. Like, if he wasn't here, Timme would be here right now, and Hayes would have a standard contract and not a 10-day deal.
We got a lot of ass backwards things going on. I want to address this question. I want to bring this question to LBL. LBL, Timme is an old school big, not made for today's game. That's why I think he hasn't gotten a shot. That's what Lou says. What are your thoughts on that? That Timme doesn't fit in today's NBA?
Like I said, it goes back to that same thing. But if you're saying that about him, you have to say that about Derek Queen as well. Because Derek Queen, I think the last time I checked, he was like 3 for 30 something from 3-point range.
He's not shooting the three.
So
stop that for now. Yeah.
And his game is predicated on him being close to the basket. That's how he was able to get all those rebounds. And we also have to figure in today's game with so much emphasis on 3-point shots, if you don't have a guy that stays close to the paint, they're never going to rebound a lot. That's why guards are more dependent on shots, because all the shots are long rebounds. So they're not rebounds that come necessarily in the paint. So for him, if you're saying that he's not that guy, then why are we excited about Derek Queen? Because Derek Queen is an old school guy as well, just like Okafor was. And I'm trying to tell you that both of them have really good bags in terms of being able to score in the paint and being able to score over their shoulder and having touch as well. But the thing is, like, I guess what the guys were arguing with me, the guys in the net section that were arguing with me were saying the coaches don't want that anymore. So I'm like, yeah, that's because that's a preference. It's not because he's not good at it. So, that's part of the problem. He'd rather have at that time, he would have rather had Joe Harris shooting threes than having Okafor score twos. So that's a preference.
John, I wanted to address this comment. Maybe I wish Dylan was here. Dylan would know this for sure. Can you confirm this, Timme? Can the Nets still have one two-way that they can extend to Timme? Is that correct? Is that accurate?
No, they gave the last one to Reese Speaker when they had to let Jackie go.
I thought so, but Ken here is saying that I don't know.
Well, they did promote. They just promoted Martin from a two-way, so maybe that two-way is now open. Maybe I don't know, but
I thought that two-way went to Killian. Oh no, Killian. You're right. No, I think Ken's right. Ken's right. Yes.
Yes.
Well done, Ken.
Is right.
Well done, Ken.
Well done, Ken. Thanks for letting us go through all that.
You're right. They do have that extra two-way. Well done, Ken.
They
well
do.
done.
They do.
Well done.
So we could bring up Timme right now, and I hope that's the next move. Maybe tonight he should be up. And unfortunately, we still have D'Lo on this team. It's like if he wasn't here, this move would have been done like that, and Killian would be under a standard deal, not a 10-day deal. That's the problem. Is we're still trying to glue this all together when this all could have been a lot more simple. But this organization doesn't understand how to be simple sometimes.
All right. Making weird decisions is a trend here for Sean Marks and the Nets. The first one, I started with you. I want to bring this to LBL. We're talking about buyout options. I love D'Lo. I don't want to buy him out, but I think that it probably is the only thing that makes sense, especially now that you pulled up Killian Hayes. You might as well let Killian Hayes run the point, see what that looks like, see if he's a backup point guard for the future. But in order to buy out D'Angelo Russell, someone would have to be willing to sign him, like the Clippers signed Ben Simmons. If the Nets tried to buy out D'Angelo Russell, is there another team that would be interested in taking on D'Angelo Russell for the remainder of the season?
I think, unlike you, I think there'll be a number of teams that will take him, and I don't mean just Detroit. I mean almost anyone that can afford to sign him probably would, because at the end of the day, he he can hit shots. He can be another ball handler, which is important, and he can pass. He's not much on defense, but I don't look at it as either or. Like when you break him down into a regular season player versus a postseason player, I don't really look at it at that unless all you do is shoot. Like if all you do is shoot, I look at it like that. Like say the JJ Redick or the Joe Harris, I look at it as, oh, you're not a postseason guy, and that's because when the defense gets tough and you don't get the same clean looks that you got in the regular season, you can't free yourself. So that's the problem. But as far as for someone like even what you said with Randall, Randall's not a good postseason guy. I feel like it just depends on the team that they're facing.
Well, yeah, so my point about Randall, and I'll get to Teal. My point about Randall is he cooks in the regular season off of two things. Well, one thing, mismatches. He either bullies small fours, like if they're playing the Nets, he's going to bully Cam Johnson around. That's going to be easy work for him. Or slow fives, like Dayron. He'll cook Dayron Sharp, right? Or he'll bully Cam Johnson, right? In the postseason, guess who's typically not on the court? Guys like Dayron Sharp, because they're too slow, right? So now you have that slow five who he's cooking. He's no longer on the court. So now Julius Randle becomes a jump shooter. And once he becomes a jump shooter, what do we find out? He's not a very good jump shooter, right?
But
Like we said.
But then you think he looked decent on the Knicks in the postseason last year?
He missed the postseason. He didn't play in the postseason last year.
Oh, then I must be thinking about prior to that.
He's never been good in the postseason. Like the year they played Atlanta and they lost to Atlanta, it was because he's not a good postseason player, right? Okay. Like, and I don't know why D'Lo sucks in the playoffs, but he sucked with the Nets as their primary ball handler, as their primary scorer. He sucked with Minnesota as a secondary option, and he sucked the worst with Lakers as a true role player. Like, I don't know why D'Lo sucks in the playoffs, but he's proven at all three levels he sucks in the playoffs. I mean, you want to get some insight on that? Like, why does D'Lo struggle so much in the postseason?
Yeah, and one of the things that I look at, it's hard for me to judge him based on just the Nets one, because it's like when 4/5 of when Karis LeVert is the only one who doesn't suck,
LeVert was the best player in the playoffs 2 years in a row, like against Toronto and against Philly. Yeah,
it's like, hey, because I mean, like I said, I went to those games when we got swept by Boston. I went to the 2 home games, and then the Nets sponsored us, and we had bus rides to Boston, and to watch that sweep up close. And in a Boston thing, it was like, man, they manhandled Durant. It's like Durant looked like he was like 60 years old. And part of it was, I think part of it was what what's that guy? Who's the guy on with Nick Wright, the basketball guy? The light-skinned black dude. I can't remember.
The guy that used to be on ESPN. Bouchard.
Yeah. He said what Durant faced was 90s defense, and he just wasn't used to it. And and Ime cooked up something, I mean, so the thing was, and it was sort of like that. Like, you thought, like, Durant, stop looking for calls, just play through it. And he looked like an old man. It's like they didn't have guys that were actually better than him, but Durant wasn't getting all the calls, and it looked like he couldn't play through it. Kyrie looked like he kind of checked out halfway through the series, and we got swept, And we should have
brings up an interesting point. I want to address it because it kind of answers the question to the T. Postseason allows a lot more physicality and defense, which D'Lo does not deal well with on either end of the floor. That's a good point, Nate.
Agreed.
Yeah, I think Nate hit a grand slam on that one because I seen D'Lo take contact this year in the little sample as well. Yikes! He's like a pin. You throw a bowling ball, he just falls on his ass, man. Like this kid cannot handle this man cannot handle the
Yeah, but
defensive side
what?
of the
Like he's 28
physicality.
years old. He's not a super frail guy, right? Like he's not built like Kerry Kittles. He's not super frail. He's he's 28. He's got his man strength. Why does he struggle so much? Because Nate makes a good point, and you're right, John. He does not like to be touched, right? Like yeah.
Yeah. Because he just
What
goes down. You need somebody that could physically keep up with the guy they're guarding, and you can get a lot of space off D'Lo. Almost feels like 4-on-5 basketball, and I'd say that's the way D'Lo is. He likes to score. Scoring's never been a problem with this guy, but you have to play two sides of the game, and he can never play that second side efficiently enough. Even with LeBron, everybody's like, all we gotta do is look for D'Lo, man. There you go. This guy is he's at that corner of his career where if you have him on this team, he's better as a backup. You can't start this guy because defensively you're already starting from a loser's mindset right there. He could be your best backup to give you offense, but if you're asking this guy to carry on the defensive side, it's not going to work anymore. I think D'Lo's hit that ceiling there, and we all know it.
Yeah. I want to get to D'Lo in. Let's put a pin in that. I want to come back to D'Lo towards the end. I want to move on to Bogdanović because this is interesting to me. Bogdanović is, I guess he's being released. He's having foot surgery. He hasn't played a single minute. He hasn't put on a uniform. He hasn't gotten out of his street clothes. I don't care. Like we all saw this coming. Why now as opposed to in October? Like, John, why did this take so long? If we weren't going to play him, why did we give him a roster spot from jump? Like, why did it take this long to get some? Like, we could have had Amari Bailey up here. We could have had Drew Timmy. We could have other guys up here instead of him wasting a spot. Why did this take so long with Bogdanović?
Huge lack of urgency. I don't know what type of board game of Candyland style Joe and Marks are playing, but the base is tired and over it. Like at the end of the day, this feels just like that with Ben Simmons. He had bad medicals. We still did the deal anyway. We got Bogdanović. Could have bought him out any time from now, but there was something where they said he was ramping up. But no, he's now out for the rest of the season. It's like, why is there such a lack of transparency with the Brooklyn base, especially on players' medical files? Like this just seems like a revolving door of the same issues over and over again. And just like you said, missed opportunities, lack of urgency. We could have called up Timmy. We could have called up Hayes 2 months ago, but you're bringing back D'Lo, which made no sense. Like we are working so backwards. It's annoying at this point. We were supposed to tank the season, but like you said, Gary, the tank is not tanking. We are doing things in such a random style when you have your own pick. If we had the Suns picks right now, all this in a crazy way would make sense, but you got your own pick back. You're supposed to be doing everything you can to build up the value, but we are just doing things all the wrong way. So it doesn't make sense. And this organization really needs to look themselves in the mirror this summer and ask, are we doing everything we can for the base, for the players to do this the right way? Or maybe we have to look at a different management player. People actually know how to plan this all out the right way because Bogdanović should have been bought out months ago, and you wait till the last minute, and the only way you could bring up Hayes is on a 10-day deal when likely he should be getting the standard deal right now, but now you have D'Lo on expiring and you have to keep him. It just doesn't make any sense the way this organization is going about things because this all could have been a lot more simpler than it's looking right now.
Let me bring the same question to you. Is this malpractice here? Like, why did they keep Bogdanović? Why do they have him tie up a roster spot for so long? To me, it looked like they were never planning on playing him, and that's obvious now. I mean, what are your thoughts on that, LBL?
I agree with you that they never were planning on playing him, but I think in Mark's mind, just like the same way that he's hard-headed about wanting 2 first-round draft picks for Cam Johnson, I think he was thinking in his mind, as long as we hold on to his contract, he could become trade fodder for a team. Like he could help be salary filler in a trade that we might possibly do. So I think that's the only reason why he held him, because he isn't expiring. So he probably thought, in case we're able to get someone and we can use some of his salary, we don't have to actually trade talent. We don't actually, because obviously he's not going to play. So he's just salary fodder. So I think that's what he did. He held on to him thinking he would be salary fodder in a trade, and, obviously he didn't make the deal. So
But
I
this
think,
is, I didn't mean to cut you up. I want to address.
no, that was it. I think
Yeah.
that I think that he held on to him. I forgot how much he makes, but I think it's significant.
It's like 16 million. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he thought if we do that, maybe it will be to a team that can afford to, either cut them or something else, or maybe what we're giving them is something so much that they can afford to take on his deal, and that's how we're going to use it. That because otherwise it doesn't make sense. You knew he wasn't going to play.
That's it's actually worse than that. It's 19. It's 19 million plus.
Yeah.
Actually worse than I thought. Uh, well done. Well done, Detroit. Another great contract from Detroit. But I want to address this comment from Mark. To allow the possibility of trade options by keeping him, Hayes has to prove himself at an NBA level. There's a reason the other 29. I don't disagree with you on Hayes, Mark. But if you're going to trade Bogdanovich, you have to play him. Like, no one is going to trade for a 35-year-old injury-plagued player without seeing him. I'm not even giving you 1-2 for him. Like, you're asking me to take on that contract and give you draft capital for a 35-year-old who hasn't played a single minute. Like, no one's going to do that. The only way to trade him was to get him on the court and show that he could still play, right? Which is why I said trade Schroeder, trade DFS, trade Camp. Let Bogdanovich be your veteran. Play him for 20 games. Show that he can still play. Show that he can still score, and then trade him too, right?
I don't think he can play though. I think that
if he can't play, if he can't play at all, just cut him from day one. Just be done with him and give the roster spot to someone else.
I think
That's all they had to do.
I think in his mind he thinks that I can't play him. He can't play. Teams that want him, they have to be teams that are willing to just take that. And then what we probably would have had to do is also offer draft capital for him. So we probably have to say, take Bogey and this future first, and we'll get the player back that we want or something,
Yeah, it seems like it was mismanaged from the beginning, honestly. Ken says Bo could have been traded if a team wanted to get off bad money.
Yeah.
Well, that depends. Is he going to pass a physical? You know what I'm saying? I don't know. I mean, he obviously passed a physical for the Bridges trade to go through, I would imagine, right? But, yeah, you could trade him, but then you're also going to have to take on a bad contract, which do we really want to do that?
You also know what it was too. Bogdanovich was here in Brooklyn a few years ago. We were going through all that crap. So there was another a Sean Marks connection. This is my problem with Sean Marks. He has to feel like he has to be everybody's best friend. But if you had a GM that has no connections to these players, Bogey would have been gone. It would have been like, hey, Bogey, nice to see you. You got to go. But Marks has this inability to let go. He was on your team a few years ago. He's not a part of our future. Just buy him out, call somebody up. But Marks has to hold on to the guy, maybe rebuild his value. But if the guy was injured, you should have just bought him out, let him rehab with his trainers. Like, I just feel like Sean Marks has this inability to take the emotions out of it. You have to when you're the boss. You can't hold on to players because you ruin their value, which this crap happened. And now the only way you can bring up Hayes on a 10-day deal. Like, why can't he just take the emotions out of it?
I'm okay with it. I don't see much in Killian Hayes. Like someone else pointed out in the chat, like there's a reason the other 29 teams said hard pass, right?
Yeah,
like,
but you know what? But I'm gonna push back a little bit on that, and I have to give a shout out to Ken Young because we probably text each other like 10 times a day about. We're going back and forth constantly. So he's definitely the ultimate number one Nets fan, I believe, in Alabama.
Oh, nice. Alabama.
Yeah.
Great state of Alabama. Love Alabama.
Which just goes to prove the point that you don't have to be in Brooklyn to be a Nets fan. So, but in terms of what you're saying, when the person just put that other post up there that said, oh, there's a reason 29 other. Anytime that you get one player, can't everyone else say that 29 other teams passed up on him?
Well, no, because he was in the G League, right? It wasn't like he was on the, you know what I'm saying? He was in the G League. So the other 29 teams had no interest in him putting him on an NBA roster. You know what I'm saying? Like he didn't even get a minimum, a vet minimum deal, right? Like no one wanted him.
So now, but by that logic, I'm thinking, well, if he's averaging like 19 and 9 or whatever he is, some really good numbers.
He's averaging 21 and 8 in the G League.
So now when I think of that, are any of those other 29 teams, do they have a point guard? Do they have a point guard in their system that's doing as well? And are they going to call that person up, like for reserves or whatever? Because I think that they do. I don't think that they do have someone that's averaging that much, but I think that they will. So with that in mind, I'm just thinking, he's probably not that bad. He's probably not that bad, but he may not be good either. But the only way we'll know is play him.
I don't think he sucks. Like he's horrible. Like I don't think he's the worst thing ever. I just think like he's got now. Ken Young is saying he's shooting the three better in the G League. Okay, if he can consistently hit the corner three, yeah, that changes everything. But I'll believe that when I see it. Right, like if he can sit there and stroke corner three at a 40% clip, that changes things. I'll buy that when I see it. Right. I don't think he's horrible. I just I don't see any this is an experimental year. Like, can we find any hidden gems? I feel we know what Killian Hayes is. He's a backup point guard who can't score. It's not that he offers you no value. He can defend a little bit. He can defend the ones and the twos. He's an excellent ball handler. He can create offense for others. I don't think he's trash. I just
But aren't those weaknesses that like I'm saying, when you think of the Sean Marks era, don't you think of times like when we do anything to get another ball handler in there? Like that's part of the reason why Ben Simmons played so much. It's like we'll do anything to get a ball handler in there. We'll do anything to get somebody who could actually be a point of attack defender on a point guard or something like that. Like yeah, he can't score, but I don't understand. Like we can play Ben Simmons all that time, but we can't play a shorter version of Ben Simmons, like a guy that maybe can't score but can still pass and play D. I don't understand that.
Well, look, that's my point. So here's what how I'm assessing this. This year, did you want to find a guy that could help you win and fill in your weaknesses, or did you want to find out if you had any hidden gems? Like, which one were you trying to do?
All right, I'm trying to.
If you're trying to win, I agree. He's not a terrible piece. He's not a terrible backup point guard. I don't disagree with that, but that's not what I was looking for.
And even this thing that Mark says, he makes a good point. David Duke played great in the G League too. I feel like David Duke.
I love David Duke. Yeah,
he was a really good defender. He was an NBA. To me, he was an NBA defender. But the problem was, he just couldn't score, and we couldn't. We couldn't, and he didn't really have that much of a handle as well to be a point guard, because remember, even though he played really great defense, he definitely was not a reliable ball handler. It's like almost all during the Marks era, we only had like maybe two ball handlers at the most in any five-man set. We only had like two ball handlers. And that's a disadvantage in today's NBA.
All right, I want to move on. I want to switch. I don't want to get too bogged down on Bogdanovic.
Bogged down.
We've spent a lot of time. I want to get to the main topic of the show. Other than star hunting, and if so, do we have something interesting here in John Morant? John, talk about John Morant for a little bit. I put the tweet away. I'm gonna go try to find it again. Mm-hmm. But John Morant, I'm thinking is gonna ask out. Now, Ja has a checkered. I don't have any problem with most of what Ja did. I don't believe he beat up a 16-year-old, and I'm a big gun guy. I don't have an issue with that. I don't have a lot of issue. As a matter of fact, when Nike didn't drop him, the first thing I did was go out and buy his shoes. I don't have any issue with John Morant personally with anything that he's done for the most part. But he's got a checkered past, and he's injured a lot. If he acts out, what's the asking price going to be? And is this something the Nets would legitimately consider acting on? I got to go take a leak. You guys talk this out.
Right. It's very interesting. The guy that came out from the Ringer, it could be all just speculation. But at the end of the day, I think the Luka blockbuster nuclear trade showed you that nothing is guaranteed in the NBA right now. Anything can change on a dime. Doesn't matter what plans you have, what timelines. teams are willing to change it up just like that now, and that's a risky gamble type of thing. But team like Brooklyn, they've shown they'd rather take the gamble than do the right, easy thing. So this season, we are just throwing this junkyard squad together, aiming for something. And if it's a play-in seed, you're gambling a potential top 3 pick that you traded back for when you trade those Suns picks away. So could the Nets have a potential interest in Ja? Sure. And I would be surprised if listen, I'll be honest with you, Memphis had a good season, a pretty good season. Even though Ja got hurt a little bit, he's still been having a good season. Not an MVP season, but he still had a good season. But you look at the trade deadline moves, I'm kind of surprised. I mean, they tried to go after Doe, but they didn't want to. They were unrelenting in removing protections. They wanted to put like 20, 30 protections on one pick, and that was no bueno. And then they had interest in Johnson, but they probably would want to do the same thing. So that wasn't going to work. And then the Jimmy Butler saga came up, and apparently Memphis had strong interest in Jimmy. And think about it, a Jimmy, Ja, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson Jr., that's a scary four right there. But Jimmy Butler's agency and himself said, I want nothing to do with them. That's a punch to the gut when an aging superstar who wants to get off a team so badly doesn't even want to go to a team that has some really solid young pieces, and you have Ja as the captain. So them not getting Jimmy, I think it tells you, as good as Memphis is, from a coaching standpoint and a cultural standpoint, they haven't shown you they're a team that's willing to get a star, and stars have shown that they don't want to go to a destination like Memphis. So if Memphis has an underwhelming playoff season this year and maybe the following, could Ja potentially request out the door? I definitely think anything's on the table at this point. And Ja has a reason to kind of be in Brooklyn. Claxton, Zaire, two close friends of his. He would have kind of he would have friends in his core right there. And you see with the league right now, teams want to be with their friends. So if Ja came here, as much as I've given Claxton a lot of flack, he has shown if you have a star point guard next to him, he could kind of elevate his game to a different level. And that pick and lob with him and Ja would be scary. So it's definitely on the table. Gary, you talked about a potential deal, 3 firsts. And I know people don't want to hear this. Cam Thomas, he's the best young star guy we have on this team. A Thomas and picks package for Ja is possible. And Memphis has a young core of Gigi Jackson, Zach Edey. So this stuff kind of would work. Would Brooklyn want to look past the Ja baggage and get him? I think they should look past the baggage, because as bad as Ja's done some things, he has kind of tried to make up for it, and he's still a star player in this league. So throw out the baggage and look at the talent. We need the talent. If we're not going to take the draft seriously, go get the star talent and let them compete on the court and try to win a title if you're not going to do things the right way. But if Marks is going to be about this old nice guy routine shtick, it's not going to do much for us. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Ja this year and next year. But he could be on the move potentially if things don't work out in Memphis.
I want to bring us to LBL because me and LBL never disagree on star hunting ever. What are your thoughts? John Morant looks like, I said it's the NBA. You never know who's going to ask out, right? Like, if John Morant wants out, what do you think the asking price would be? And is this something that you would pursue?
All right, say that again.
All right, if Ja does ask out, let's say Ja wants to be traded and Memphis is open to trading him, what would the asking price be? And would you be interested? Should the Nets be interested in making a serious run at Ja Morant?
I probably would pass on him. Talent wise, he's great, but I'm not sure with that support system. We're getting T Morant with him, and we're bringing a guy who has trouble with guns. We're bringing them to Brooklyn. I'm not sure that's a good recipe. You know, but hey, I guess if other people want to ignore it, and I think that's what Gary King is referring to when he says we're taking that usual risk we love to do, and I think that's part of it as well. Like Sean Marks, he said, he may, we do get tired of the Boy Scout type of stuff, like as far as the personalities, but I'm not sure that Ja is, he may be too volatile a person to really say, well, let's bring him in. And then the only person he listens to is his dad, who's even more volatile than him. So I'm not sure that's a good move. And one thing I wanted to ask you, maybe you two guys can answer quickly, is who do you think is a better player, Donovan Mitchell or Ja Morant?
You want to
Wow.
go first, Gary? You go first, Gary. I'll go second.
I think they're comparable. I guess if I had to pick one, I would take Spider Mitchell. He's got a stronger body, so he's probably going to break down less. He's definitely the better shooter. It's close. I think Donovan Mitchell's the right answer, though.
Yeah, I would say Mitchell has gotten so much better. What he's doing with the Cavs, phenomenal work. He's really evolved from just trying to carry a team to like he now divvies up the responsibilities while still scoring at a very impressive clip. But with Ja, the athletic acrobats, it's special. When some people see what he can do on the court, it's like, damn, Jordan-esque, LeBron-esque. But the biggest problem is the health worries. He does have some shoulder stuff he's dealing with as well. But at the end of the day, he's still in his young prime. You get him, you have a window. Now, can we look past the baggage and the health? Maybe, maybe not. I'm 50-50. But if we're looking at star options and Morant wants to come be here with some guys he's played with or he has a relationship with, that's the types of connections you hope to build on that brings out the positives of Ja and leaves the negatives in the background. But like you said, Marks has this whole good guy persona, but you took on Ben Simmons. Let's call it out what it is. You took on one of the biggest con jobs in sports history. That's a problem.
Let me ask this question. First, I want to push back on a little bit of what you guys have said about the guns. I'm from the South. He's from the South. Everyone has guns. The gun in the strip club was a very, very bad look. Granted, okay, that's not okay. The second thing was just him putting his gun away in his car. Something that everyone in the South does every day. I didn't see like what he even did wrong there. I don't believe he actually beat up a 16-year-old in a pickup basketball game. Now, I don't have evidence for that. It just seems ridiculous. I don't think that Ja...
saying he lost, right?
Well, he lost.
Pulled out the gun, right?
Whoa.
I don't think Ja is the villain that everyone makes him out to be. Like, when he got suspended for half the season, I thought that was insane. That's why, like I said, the first thing I did was go buy his sneakers to support him. I don't think he's the villain, that he's the troublemaker that everyone's making him out to be. I don't see him like that.
I don't see him as, like I said, like, because a lot of these guys, it's, especially since I teach a lot of teenagers, sometimes it's not really the person themselves, but it's whoever they surround themselves with, and I'm saying, his dad is kind of embarrassing at times, like with the way that he is, but hey, I'm sure he would be beloved in Brooklyn, like with everyone, but
they would love him. His energy, his style of play, they would love Ja.
Yeah.
But, the other thing that I was mentioning, and I see what's his name already said something. Thank you. Yeah. One thing that John said that was funny. One thing that John said that was funny was wow, Sherman Douglas. He went really back there. But one thing,
I love Sherman Douglas.
Yeah. And one thing that was funny that John was saying was that this would make Breezy and the rest of them really upset, because you're saying that Cam Thomas would have to go in that trade. And the reason I brought up Mitchell was because I was remembering when people were saying, in the last summer, that when we were possibly getting, or maybe it was 2 summers ago, I don't know, when we were possibly getting Mitchell, and everyone said, nah, we can't have a backcourt of Cam Thomas and Mitchell because they're too small. And it's like, nah. So it's like, but this guy is small too. And he's like even lighter, at least like what you said. Mitchell is more robust,
Yeah, and look, Toronto won a championship with a backcourt of Kyle Lowry and Fred VanVleet. I don't know if there's ever been a smaller backcourt than that, height-wise. I know they're both physically strong and stuff, but so is Cam Thomas. So, like, you can win with a small backcourt if you have Kawhi Leonard, I guess. But,
yeah. I see what you mean, and especially if somebody is really that Joe Dumars type, because they won as well, right?
Yeah, that's true.
But what I'm looking at with what you're saying about this guy Ja, now when you're talking about star hunting, I think like to trade this guy, I think they're gonna want back a star, And I guess if you're saying Cam Thomas is the star, I'm thinking he probably isn't big enough a star for them to get back. So I think what we'd have to end up doing, and this is probably why I'm mostly against some of the star hunting, is we're going to have to wait till we see who we draft. And if we got lucky and drafted like one of those top three stars, and, even though they're not a star yet, if they were on their way, then we'd say, suppose we had one of the three, Dylan or Cooper or
Yeah.
Ace, and they were not stars right away. Like they struggled like regular rookies do, but they were like all rookie guys, right? Like on the all rookie team. And you knew it was just a matter of a season or two or three before they turned into all stars, right? Now, are you going to give that person up so that you can get an already established star in Ja, and you're gonna have to pay Ja probably like three times the money that this that this fledgling star is playing.
Yeah, and to me, this is. I'm going to answer first, and I'll let John answer because he's gonna. I don't know how John's going to answer, honestly. I know you're going to say no, you wouldn't do that, right? All right. I would do it. Why? Because if the guy I draft turns out to be as good as John Morant or Spider Mitchell or someone like that, but let's use John Morant in this case, I win. That's a home run for me. I drafted an all-star. I drafted my future star that I can build around. He's 25 years old. He's got 7, 8 years left of his prime. Why wouldn't I just take him? Like, if the guy I draft, I hope, turns out to be as good as Ja, or I can just get Ja in his absolute prime, why wouldn't I just take Ja, right? Instead of hoping this guy
here's
turns
the
into...
reason why. Here's the reason why. It's the compensation, because you're giving up some of your draft coffers. You're giving up some of your talent, and you got to pay this guy. Soon Ja's going to be worth 45 or 50 million dollars a year, and that limits
Well, he
you.
can be worth 60. Yeah, he's got the new.
That's going to limit the team moving forward into what you could pay guys around him. So you're building a team. You're not. See, what you're talking about is you're trading for a star, but you're not necessarily building a team to win.
So here's my thing. Okay, so we draft. Let's say we get Dylan Harper. Like you said, his first year, 2 years, he'll be good and he'll show you lots of signs, but he's not going to be a legit superstar his first 2 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's on a 4-year deal. So that means you get 2 years of him as an all-star caliber player, and then you have to give him $60 million, right? So what I'm saying is by the time he's an established all-NBA player under these new CBAs, where it's your 4th year and where everyone leaves college after 1 year, by the time you develop into a star, it's already time to pay the guy, right? Like, so by the time Dylan Harper is an all NBA caliber player, it's going to be time. He's going to go to contract. He's going to get his big contract. So maybe you get 1 year where he's seriously underpaid. To me, I'd rather not take the risk. Look, I think Dylan Harper is safe, right? But I'd rather just get the star who I know is a star than hoping I get to develop this guy 2-3 years into a star, and then I get 1 year left on his rookie deal where he's grossly underpaid. I'd rather just give me John now, and I'll start building. Open up that window now, and I'll start building around. I'll start building around John today.
Okay, so what I'm looking at is say 3 years from now, you have Ja, right? He's already signed. He's making 60. You have Dylan. He's finally developed. He's making freaking 15. You could build other guys around with that 45 million difference. It makes a difference. That's what I'm saying.
It does, right? But like, if Dylan or Ace or whoever we pick becomes an all NBA caliber player, he's going to be making a max contract in due time anyway, right? And we all agree that year 1 and year 2, neither Dylan nor Ace nor Cooper is going to be an all NBA caliber player, right? They may have.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. So you what I'm saying is, because these guys come into the league so early now, that bargain that you're getting on a rookie deal, you're eating 2 years of that at least because those are developmental years. I'd rather just start building a winner now, right?
Well,
Because
here's another thing, right? It would be like trading Cade for Ja, right? But the difference is that during Cade's 2 or 3 years while he was coming up, they still stunk enough so that they were able to get Duran, they were able to get, the other point guard and whatever, and they were able to get one of the Thompson twins. So here's the thing. Immediately, if you traded like, a top 3 pick and said, you know what, we're gonna go with Ja instead. We're gonna give them the top 3 pick. The thing is, Ja's gonna help us be mediocre sooner. He's going to help us, or play.
Agreed. No, I agree. I agree. Go ahead, continue with that. No, I'm with you.
That's what I'm saying. It's like we're going to be too good too soon, but then because his money is what it is, it's going to be harder to get away from that middle of the pack status. That's what I'm saying.
So let me put it like this. So here's hypothetical. Let's say we win the lottery and we draft number 2. Who do you like better at 2? Ace or Harper? Who do you like better personally?
For me, I like Ace.
All right, you like Ace. So let's say we draft Ace at number 2. Memphis calls you up and says, I got a deal for you. Ja for Ace. What do you say, LBL?
I'm probably turning it down. I know who's better. I know who's 10 times better and proven. That's Ja right now. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. He's better. He's the proven thing. But I'm probably turning it down because I like the upside of having a low salaried guy for the next 4 or 5 years.
I get it. Yeah.
Who I can afford to build around more than I do having a guy that's going to come in making $50 million already.
Who is the GM of Memphis? It's Zach Kleiman. That's his name. So, John, I'm going to put the same question to you. You can be the tiebreaker here. Zach Kleiman, GM of the Memphis, calls you up day after draft day. Who do you like better, Ace or Harper? Who do you like better at 2? Who would you draft?
I always said 1, 2, 3 would be Cooper, Ace, or Harper, so it would be Ace just because of the scoring ability, and we could develop him with the coaching staff we have. So that's what I would do. But I agree with him too. I wouldn't do it for Ja, especially since we have time to decide that. And at the end of the day, if you choose between, we still have Thomas on the books. This is why I say to Breezy. I know Breezy's disappointed anytime we bring up Thomas as a trade chip, but you got to look at the logistics here. If Marks wants to go down the star route again, our assets as far as players go, is limited, and Thomas is a scoring bucket. So if we go after with Giannis, Thomas unfortunately will be on the table. Now, if we get Ace, longevity-wise, Ace has the athleticism, and if he gets stronger, that's an addition when you have Ja on this team. Whereas with Thomas, we kind of know where his ceiling is right now. So you have to look at who would you throw first out with the draft picks. It would unfortunately have to be Thomas over Ace in that scenario. That's where I would be if I'm thinking long-term about our future, because I agree with LBL at the same time. Ja is injury-prone. We're taking a huge gamble getting him. He has the acrobatics, but this is why you need young players that can score well next to a guy like Ja, and Ace would fit that parameter. So this is why it mind boggles me that we're taking such a gamble this year, gambling our own draft pick. Because if we get 6 through 8, get an Edgecombe, a Trey Johnson, you have to get a Ja eventually or a star, because these are decent building pieces. But if you miss out on great talent that's going to grow well, you're playing backwards. So this is why this draft is so important. If we miss out on top 3, I think a Ja, a Giannis, any star that is available, we're probably going to be looking at, because I feel like Marks and Joe are still in denial about what happened with the Big 3 debacle. I don't think they can get over it, and that's why I think they're looking at stars, because they want to get back there, because they know if the stars are playing well, they have a chance like anybody else has a chance. But does that work long term?
I want to address this comment real quick. I want to address this comment from Ken Young. A rookie max. Hang on, let me address this real quick. Ken Young says a rookie max extension is less than $60 million. All right, so the rookie max contract is 25% of the salary cap. When Ace or Cooper or any of these guys would become eligible is 29-30, right? 4 years, and then that's the salary cap projected $226 million. What's 25% of $226 million? Right around $60 million. So yeah, no, it's going to be right around $60 million when the Nets go to sign re-sign Ace or Cooper or Harper. Go ahead, LBL. What were you saying?
Oh, I couldn't believe that. It seems like is that something that changed because when these guys signed, I thought it was well, you're probably right if it's going up because everything is going up because I think the last one was like 160 something and that's why these guys could get 40 something per year, right?
Right,
Oh,
exactly.
okay, but now what I was going to say about what I was going to ask you, Gary, is do me a favor, indulge me and build your team for the next, we all say like, okay, not this season, not next season, but the third season. So build your team with Ja, like making the trade. Build your team.
All right, so are we assuming that Cam Thomas goes in that deal, right? Because what we just talked about was just straight. Are we trading? Like, here's my question: are we trading both Cam Thomas and this year's one? Because I'm not doing that. I'm doing one or the other. You get one or the other. Right. So if we're keeping Cam,
okay, I'm saying that we're probably. See, I don't know. Like I think they do it for one of those top three. I think they would do it because they still have enough in Bane and JJJ. And I think they still have enough where they might actually do it, but then you're talking about what's the salary filler, like for Ja, So if we're not,
we would put Cam Johnson in the trade with
right.
fill the salary, but we have plenty of cap to take on that extra money. Like we would have plenty of cap.
True.
Okay, so what are they getting? What is Memphis?
So to me, the trade is one of two things: either Cam Thomas and a bunch of ones, right? Or they're getting this year's number one, Cam Johnson, and then some future draft picks, right?
I think the latter would probably be what they would do because if they're looking at Cam Johnson, they're not thinking like they don't see him. Much to Breezy's chagrin. I don't think that they see Cam as the big star that everyone else does. So I think they would go with the one of those top three guys.
This was my problem with the tank mentality from the beginning. I wanted to develop these guys, right? And now we just want to lose games, so we're not going to play Cam Thomas. When you don't play Cam Thomas, you lose all value. He's played 19 games this year. We all believe that if this was the playoffs or we were making a playoff run, Cam Thomas would be playing, right?
Yes.
So instead of developing Cam Thomas, if Cam Thomas had played 50 games this year or 40 games this year and was averaging 25 on 45, 38 shooting like he's doing, right, he would have way more value. But out of sight, out of mind, plus now he's injury plagued, so now his trade value goes all the way down instead of just developing him and let the chips fall where they may. So now, yes, we may get Cam Thomas a few $1 million cheaper, but he also lost all of his trade value. And the plan, obviously, to me, was to go star hunting, which is why Cam Johnson is still on the team. If you would have played Cam and Cam played like an all-star, which he was doing, he would have the same value as Tyler Hero, which would be a lot in the trade.
Yes. And to add to your point, next year, even if you got one of these top three guys, you still have to play and you don't make any trades, you still have to play Cam Thomas for at least half a season to resurrect his value.
Right.
And that, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know if that looks like winning or if it looks like semi-tanking or whatever. But I understand what you're saying. So let's go with the second scenario that they trade the pick, because that's what your question originally was.
So they trade Ace Bailey and Cam Johnson and then some future ones.
Okay. Go ahead. So you're doing that in the off season. Go ahead.
So now I got now I feel pretty good. Now I got my 1 and my 2 scores already in place. Jaws my one, Cam Thomas is my secondary option. I already feel like I'm a playing team at this
point. So your backcourt is set. Your backcourt is set.
I believe so.
And then you got Clowney. Who else?
Now I got Connie. I'm still gonna have some cap space. Right, Cam Johnson is gone. So I got Connie and Claxton as my 4-5. I keep Daron and I keep Zaire. So without making any more free agent moves, because I don't know what the cap situation would be. But we have at the 1 next year, Ja, at the 2, CT, at the 3, Zaire, at the 4, Clowney, at the 5, Claxton.
And you still have your other picks, right? I mean,
right.
or is it going to take more than that top 3 pick?
Well, it's going to take more than that top 3 pick. I'm not giving you. It's going to. Hang on one second. But yeah, we still have that. Wait, no, we traded the top 3 pick to keep Cam Thomas, right? We traded Cam Johnson and our top 3 pick, right?
Is that enough to get Ja?
I would say it would take at least 2 more ones. So I'll give you the Knicks pick, and I'll give you like a 2029. So you get this pick, the Knicks pick, a 2029, and CJ.
So you still get to round out some of your rotation with the 2 25s we keep, right?
Right.
Okay. So now, do you feel like those 2 25s, the guys where we might bring back, like you said, Zaire, Clowney, you feel like that's enough to? Is that a playoff team?
I think it's a playoff. I do. Yeah, I think it's a playoff team. Because
do you think it's a second round team?
That's a lot more. I say we're better than Detroit, which is a playoff team. Are we better than the Celtics? Of course not. Are we better than the Cavs? Of course not. Are we better than the Knicks? Probably not. I mean, is it a second? I would say no. Possibly yes, probably no. Like there's a chance.
I would think we wouldn't be better than Detroit, and the reason is because Detroit. The reason I would say that we were not better than Detroit is because both teams are young, right? But Detroit's going to get their seasoning this year, whereas a lot of those guys that we're playing with don't really have the postseason seasoning. Ja will help because he has it, but the other guys like and Claxton will have it, right? But I'm not sure. I feel like Detroit will get incrementally better every year. I know some people don't think that, but I think they will. I think giving them that playoff experience, and I think that they'll get much better.
You know what's interesting about this scenario? If we do trade Ace, I wouldn't personally trade Ace for Ja. I think I would hold on to Ace, let him develop with Thomas, and then make a decision the following year. But if we did do that, it almost feels like we're doing a Cavs 2.0, whereas like Ja is the Mitchell, Thomas is the Garland. I get some people have compared Clowney to maybe being like Mobley, and I guess Claxton is the Jared Allen. It almost feels like we'd be Cavs 2.0 with that core 4, but could that core 4 stack up against a team like the Cavs core 4? I don't know. I just feel like that would be a massive gamble. I feel like next year's trade deadline, if we outdid expectations, let's say we get Ace and Thomas is still here, we outdid expectations. I think next year's deadline, the Nets might be tempted to make a big move for somebody. Because if you outperform expectations at that point, you might do something like that. I don't know if this summer, if the Nets are going to go that route, though.
Well, let's say you're saying this. Gary, your same scenario, right?
Yeah.
But instead, we don't do the trade this year. We do it during next year when we still have our own pick. And then we're saying, okay, we're going to give you the same guys, our 26 pick, whatever, 27. Yeah. So now you're getting more than 1 year's pick, maybe even 2 years pick. So we're giving you 2 27s and our 26 plus Cam Johnson for Ja, right? Now you get to keep the guy, but I'm just wondering how good can we get? That's what I'm saying.
Well, so like here's the thing. The good thing about Cam is Cam's going to get underpaid, right? Because he's been hurt all season. Yeah, he's been out all season, and it's just not a good year to be a free agent. There's just not a lot of teams with a lot of cap space this year, right? So Cam's going to get underpaid. So then you put Cam on a team-friendly deal, he becomes easy to trade. If like he goes out and plays like an all-star next year on a good contract, let's say he's making $28 million.
Yeah,
he becomes easy to trade.
That's why next year's deadline makes way more sense to your hypothetical, Gary, because if we do outperform expectations, Thomas on the contract, he performs well first half of next year, it all lines up better than it does this year because this summer it's really bad. Like you said, not a lot of teams have cap space. Free agency looks like a ditch. Like, if we can re-sign Thomas, if we somehow draft Ace Bailey, let this develop with Jordy. Jordy's shown you he wants to outperform expectations. If we are lined up next year, like we're not a top team, but we're near the middle and play-in type thing, making a move for a job or a available star makes a lot more sense because you could keep your pick. And if we have to give 26 picks, I think a lot of people would feel upset about that. But if you give that up and Thomas and some picks, I think that lines up better than it does this summer. I feel like this summer we're just going for a shot in the dark, giving up more than we have to at that point.
That's my problem with giving up. That's my problem with giving up the top 3 rookie guy is because even if we get Ja, like Ja, we know what the sky's the limit. He's at his peak, right? He's entering his. I mean, he's a young guy, but we will expect him to still score, between 25 and 30 and be dynamic and all that. We'll expect that. But the other guys, can they I don't think that highly enough of Claxton or Sharp or or Cam Thomas or even Clowney to say, well, they're going to get so much better that 2 years from now we're going to be even better. And that's not saying that they're not young because they are young, But I just, I don't know. Are they going to rise that much so that we go beyond being a middling team? That's what I'm saying.
What, by middling team, you mean a team that's one and done in the playoffs?
Yeah, like a team that's like 6 or 5 in the playoffs.
Well, no, not right away, right? But I mean, like, to be honest, Houston is probably going to be one and done in the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I could see it.
Would you like to be in the same position as Houston?
I actually would, but for me, I think, and I'm probably in the minority here, but I think that Jalen Green has to go. I think he's overrated. As great as the numbers he's putting up lately, but I can see why they didn't give him the full money. Because to me, I don't think he's as good as advertised. And
I don't disagree.
And you could probably say the same thing for, man, can you imagine? All you have to do is think this. Can you imagine if Orlando had taken Jabari Smith instead of Paolo? That would have been a disaster for them, right? Like I'm saying, Paolo is so much better. Remember they were going back and forth, like who would be number 1?
Yeah, imagine the Rockets got Paolo and Sengun. That'd be scary.
He's underrated, but he's also not as good as, say, like the guy on the Cavs. What's his name? The big man.
Mobley?
Yeah, Mobley. Like I'm still trying to find out how good Jabari is because I don't see him as good as him. I see him probably at that stage that JJJ was at a while back.
I can see that. The last topic I wanted to touch on was moving forward. And we talked about D'Lo a little earlier and how I don't think he can move him. You guys say maybe we can. Detroit, Orlando may make a bit of sense. Like there may be places that would pick up D'Lo if we tried to buy him out. This Sports Illustrated article yesterday that the Nets need to re-sign D'Lo. It actually called it a priority. I wanted to touch on this.
Written by D'Lo's agent.
Yeah, D'Lo's agent wrote this. Just go ahead, Alvin. Give me your thoughts on that. Does the Nets need to bring back D'Lo?
Yeah, I
next year.
Well, I didn't actually read the article, so there's that. But I just think that at this point, I don't think that if you're a team, there's no sense in even saying it because if you're a tanking team, we don't know if we're tanking, but if we're a tanking team, there's no sense in signing D'Lo. And I do have this scary thought in the back of my mind that Sean doesn't want to. It's like he's so wishy-washy that he may be of the mind, I don't want to tank now. I want to tank next year. And it's like, so I'm trying to win this year, but then I'm going to tank next year. And it's almost like a throwaway year, So it's like that means you wasted all of that because, so and now in that scenario, probably what Sean would do is when we get closer to draft time, depending on May 12th, the order or whatever, you will know he's serious about that if he ends up trading some of the picks, for like next year's picks or something. But I feel like that may be a scenario with him. So when you're talking about that, D'Lo being a priority, I don't think that you can say an unwanted guy who doesn't play defense and is closing in on 30 years old that he's a priority for a team that has our record. That's ridiculous to me. That's stupid.
I got the article up here, but okay, look, I agree with you. Like calling it a priority is not, it's not a priority. So let's just curb the word priority. He's not going to get a big multi-year deal from anyone this offseason. A, because he hasn't played well this year, and B, because no one has the cap space to do it, and they're not going to spend it on D'Lo. So if you could get him on a 1-year vet minimum, would you bring him back? I guess it's more. Well, I'm not saying we should prioritize.
Let me ask you one more thing.
Yeah.
Now, because I feel like this is driven.
I wanted to ask you one question about something you said that I think was very intriguing. That the Nets will want to tank next year, not this year. I don't think that's Marks' game plan. I also don't think it's a bad game plan. Like next year's draft class, I haven't looked at next year's draft class, but all the reports is that it's even better.
Yes.
If you remember,
top heavy, yeah.
Before the Spurs got Wemby, the year before they made the play-in, and they were in a similar position as the Nets, right? Where they had this horrible roster and they overplayed and they actually got into the play-in. And then the next year they went full tank and got Wemby.
Yes.
Is it a bad idea? Like, let's just get these guys some experience. Let's get Cam Thomas to a play-in. Let's get Noah Clowney to a play-in. Let's get them to that game. And then we'll just tank next year for AJ. Is that a horrible game plan? I'm being serious.
I think it's a horrible game plan because you're a possible starter who can be better than anyone that's on our team right now in one of those top 3. So I think that's a horrible thing to do because we traded 3 picks for 2, and now you're not even using. It's virtually like you're not even using one of the 2 we got back. So, but the other thing is I wanted to say about D'Lo is suppose what's his name lands in our lap, Harper. Do you still think D'Lo is a priority? Because then we can't say, well, he needs that veteran presence. Man, you can sign Avery Johnson to do that. Come on, please.
But you're getting D'Lo. I'm not saying we pay D'Lo $15 million a year. I'm not suggesting that.
Oh, I'm not talking about the money. So I understand you. I'm not talking. It might be 10 million. It might be 12 million. But I'm saying, but if you do get a Harper, say you do get a Harper, right? Then how much do you want D'Lo to actually play? Especially if you still have Cam. How much is he going to actually play, really?
Well, I would say 2 things, right? He'd be my backup guard, and he'd be a combo guard. He'd play when Harper comes off, he's your point guard. When Cam comes off, he's your 2.
Understood.
Right? And he's not very good at playing off the ball. We saw that with LeBron, right? But I would do that. And I think at that point, Cam Thomas trade, if you wanted to trade Cam, it becomes more easy to trade Cam Thomas because I have a guard who can create offense. I have a guard who can score in D'Lo. Like I could play a backcourt of D'Lo and Harper, and I feel okay about that, right? Like
yes, but you also have to build up. You also have to build up Thomas. You also have to build back up Thomas's trade value so that you're actually getting something for him.
Right, and I'm starting the season with Cam as my 2. So let's say we're 30 games in. We get to December 15th. We're 30 games in. Cam Thomas is averaging 25 points a game on 45-38 shooting like he was doing this year. He looks great. And now I can trade him with some picks for a superstar. I feel okay about doing that because I feel okay with having D'Lo for now as my other guard with Harper.
Now, the only way I think you're going to get that superstar is you got to give up your 26 pick, which could be one of these star guys, right? You got to give up your 26 pick.
Yeah, but if in this circumstance, if Harper's playing well and Cam Thomas is playing well and Clowney's playing well, you're not drafting one to get AJ DeBanza. You're not going to be. Yeah,
I understand, but they'll probably ask for not only that pick, but for your 27 picks too. You know?
Yeah, probably.
So, can I just say this to LBL's point? LBL's a genius, man, because he just came up with a way to save this organization. Let's just say that Sean Marks idiotically threw the season away, missed it on top 3. That's a massive failure. But next year's draft, it's looking really damn good. Everybody's talking about AJ DeBanza, Darren Peterson, Cam Boozer, Nate Amont. That top 4 right there looks gravy. So let's say that somehow through great fortune, we get an Ace or Harper, trade Johnson and Claxton this summer, get a whole bunch of newbies on this team with your young core, revive Cam Thomas stock, tank as hard as you can next year, get a top 3 in 2026. If we have an established star in this draft and a young established star in the following, the sky is the true limit with this team. We can get a superstar right after that and do this a lot more organically and have a lot more balance than trying to get a star right now with scraps and trade away all of our assets. So LBL's plan makes a lot of sense, but I also say this: why throw this season away potentially, miss out on top 3? Like getting a 5 through 8, it's a building block. But and try to aim for next year. You get 1 prospect star. Why not get 2? Why not aim as high as you can? If we get Ace or Harper this summer, trade Johnson, Claxton away, take as hard as you can, get a Darren Peterson or Nate Amont, we are right there in a star hunt. Because if you have young established stars and you have cap space flexibility and draft picks still, we can go any way about this, Gary. I think that is a great strategy LBL came up with. But will Marks execute it? Gary proposed. That's the problem. Marks doesn't seem to have a clue right now.
But that's the biggest problem because none of the 3 of us can say with conviction. Like we all know, like Gary doesn't have the stomach for, like a 2-year tank. Breezy doesn't. BKNY doesn't. Like most net fans don't have a stomach for being terrible on purpose, so especially now that they think that they have the coach of the freaking century. But with that said, I'm thinking if they don't have it, we can't do this because the only person that has less conviction about tanking than any of us is Marks himself. He's not built for this, man. So that's what makes it really difficult, because can you trust that someone, because like you said, Gary, Zion might be available this offseason or during next midseason. So can we trust that Marks won't mortgage away the future to get some box office like a Ja or Zion?
No, you know that he will. And this is why I made this point to John before we went live. Like, Marks is awful. You guys talk, not you, but like a lot of net fans talk about this rebuild. Like we have Danny Ainge or Brad Stevens, or we have this great GM, Leon Rose, or whoever else. Like we don't. We have Sean Marks. So you have to deal with what you have, right? And I don't trust Sean Marks with all these draft picks. He's going to screw this up. I would rather him just trade for a star and be mediocre. You know what I'm saying? Like stop, like get Ja, stop sucking, right? And go from there. I don't trust him with all these picks. He's gonna screw it up, right? Like you have to.
Yeah.
That's if we had a good GM, if we had Danny Ainge in here, I would feel different about a tank. We don't. We have Sean Marks. Like you have to deal with what you have.
And look,
and you hired a coach that doesn't want to tank. So how are we supposed to do this right if the coach wants to win and he has a lot of power in this team, and the organization's just like, okay, you can run the show, we'll get you a star. Like at the end of the day, LBL, your plan would be bulletproof if Danny Ainge was the GM of this team. Me and Gary would be all full board, but you have all this capital and you have flexibility. I keep hearing the word flexibility. Mark seems to have his finger on the trigger, waiting for a Giannis to be available. As soon as they're available, we're going to be in all the trade rumors. You're going to hear our names come up. So it's like, this is what it just feels like. Marks is impatient. Joe Desai is all over the place with AI technology and all this other crap. He doesn't even care about basketball, I think. So when you have an owner and a GM that players all over the damn place, they're probably going to do what they know, which is their playbook. We're watching a 2018 bootleg version of D'Lo and the Misfits. What follows that? Stars. Like, this is what me and Gary keep saying is, as important as tanking makes sense, we have the wrong leadership that doesn't follow that model, unfortunately.
Okay,
Right.
let's look at Mark's question, because hypothetically we draft Flag or Ace. Do you bring back D'Lo as a stopgap point guard? I am not against that at all. So if that was your original question, I'm not against that. But
yeah, I'm with that. I like that, Mark.
But I am against it. I am against it. You know, if we just end up with a middling, I guess I'm not against it at all, as long as re-signing D'Lo doesn't get in the way of younger guys who are actually as good or potentially better. You know, that's all I can say. So we might get a Boogie Flan, or we
I was
might
going
get
to throw that
Ian
name out there. What if we draft Boogie Flan with like,
or we might get an
pick?
Ian Jackson or someone like that. And I'm going to tell you, Ian Jackson probably over the next few years, not his first or second year, but by his third year, he's going to be better than D'Lo is, than D'Lo is currently. So I think that, you just don't want to impede any of those other guys.
Mark makes another good point. It's not a 2-year tank; it's a 2-year rebuild, right? Like,
is that semantics?
I don't think so. Like, I think what Toronto is doing this year is tanking.
Yes,
strategically, mind you.
Right, strategically. Next year, if they play these guys and they get a little bump, Toronto's in a much better shape than us, right? But there's a difference. Yes, they're trying to lose games. Next year, if we play a bunch of young guys, we're playing to win as opposed to playing to lose this game. You know what I'm saying?
But here's the reason that it's not semantics, but here's the reason why I say tanking is below rebuilding.
Agreed.
Right? And what I can say is 6 years ago, Toronto won a title. We haven't won jack. So,
right.
So to say we're rebuilding, I know what he means, like based on the big three and all that. But what I'm saying is looking at it as, no, I think we needed to tank, because when we're rebuilding, our rebuilding pieces just aren't really good enough. That's what I'm trying to say. Like I mean, like if you give me Scotty Barnes and you give me Emmanuel Quickly, I feel a lot better than
I got news for you guys.
And you give me
what's the news, Gary?
If Toronto ends up with a top 4 pick, which is very possible, they're going to have Barnes, RJ, Quickly, Ingram, and then that top 4 pick. They're going to be a problem in the East for a long, long time.
I think they're going to look at that Duke center, right? They're going to look at Maluak,
yeah, or Queen. Like they're going to be a problem.
Like, wow.
Like if they do well in the lottery, they're going to have they're good to go.
See, and that's the problem Gary is pointing out, which is great that you point out, Gary. Look at this. The Raptors, the most strategic tanking team right now. They already got their franchise guy of the future. We got our third guy in Brandon, so let's get a second star. Like, they're doing this so smart right now. And you also look at Boston, still dominating. The Knicks, they're still very competitive. They're in that bracket, unfortunately. And as much as the 76ers look like complete trash, you still have Tyrese Maxey. They still have their star of the future. So if they blow it up, they have a young star to build around. We don't have that. We have a mirage of a junkyard squad of guys fighting for their lives. And to Mark's point, if we had the Suns picks, this is rebuilding, retooling, but you got your own pick back. So to LBL's point, you should have broke it all down. We have an organization that's in denial still of how that big three went down. They're hoping to swing for another star as soon as they become available, but we don't have the pieces. You could get the star, but if you don't have the pieces around it, we're just the Chicago Bulls. Like, I wish we had an organization that was going to do this the right way, but we don't, unfortunately.
In the summertime, I was a clowny guy. I was like, wow, he's going to become, I was a big clowny guy. I want to see him play this year. And I do feel like he's regressed, whether it's due to injuries or the way that they're playing him as a spot up shooter. But
I think it's that.
But my thing is, it's like, I don't feel right now that I don't feel as confident as other Nets fans do that we have talent. I really don't. I'm like, man, we don't really have a lot of talent. And I'm saying, when Pod Thorne starts talking about Washington, yeah, they're not going to be able to swing deals to get people to come into DC. But if they get one of those top 3 guys or whatever, or they do have pieces where those guys will actually get better, like Bubba
Right.
Carrington, and Bubale, or whoever it is, Boulay, and whoever else the other guy is, Sar, and so, but that's what I'm saying. But when I look at us, it's like, man, we need real talent, because we're looking at these guys. It kind of reminds me, Gary's gonna hate this, but it kind of reminds me of being like a Mets fan before Gooden and Strawberry got there.
That's before my time. I was born in '83. I don't remember a time before
Good for you. Because I'm trying to tell you, while the Yankees were out here swinging for stars, getting the Reggie Jacksons and whoever else, and the Dave Winfields and all this, the Mets were like, no, well, we're fine with this guy. We're and it's like, these guys sucked. But you're trying to make.
Gooden was the best pitcher in baseball at 19 years old or something like that, right?
Yes.
So
yes. But I'm saying, so. But before that, their team just settled for, and that's what I'm saying. That's why that's not an indictment on the franchise when the highlight of our season is retiring a guy that only spent like 4.5 years here, retiring Vince Carter's jersey. That's not an indictment on the franchise.
I was not in favor of that. John, I'll give you the last word, then I got to wrap.
Yeah, it's scary, LBO. We are currently being led by a backcourt of D'Lo and Keon Johnson, and people are praising that. Like, we are so far behind right now that the organization thinks if you get a star here, it all just changes like magic. That's not how the NBA works. You need a balance. I feel like ultimately it's going to be a mix of young stars and young prospects and eventually a star, but it's how you get there. And I feel like we're doing things backwards, sideways, instead of just doing it forward the right way. But until this summer will be the most important summer in Brooklyn Nets history. We'll find out on May 12th whether the organization knew this whole time we're getting a top pick, or we find out we have a very incompetent organization that doesn't have leadership skills. So it'll be interesting to see how this all plays out. But yeah, I mean, we have a month and a half left to go. We'll see where this team ends. And if they get into a play-in, cross your fingers and hope for the best at that point, because we're not supposed to be there. We're supposed to be a bottom 3 team, and we're being led by the junkyard squad of guys just fighting for contracts. They don't care about the future. Just to Scam Johnson's point, I care about making money and playing to win. I don't care about your future. And that's the problem, is that we don't have an organization that has everybody on the same page. It's everybody fighting for their own goals. And that's not how you build a winning system. That's how you build a system that's on the collapse, because anybody can leave at that point. So I hope we figure out how to balance this all out. And this summer, we make the right moves for once, instead of just going into what keeps screwing us over time and time again. But great show, guys. And it'll be interesting to see how this last month and a half goes.
All right, John, you turned 2 minutes into 10 minutes. Great.
Hey, under 5.
Under 5. Great job. Appreciate you, John. I appreciate you jumping on with us, LBL.
No problem, man.
Appreciate it.
Season picks up again tomorrow. We get to lose to Cleveland. Then Thursday, me and John will be back. John, what time do you want to go live Thursdays? 1 o'clock, good?
Wait, you mean Friday? Friday, right?
What the hell day is it? Yeah,
Friday. Wednesday. Yeah, Friday.
Yeah.
How about Friday? We'll do 12:30. We'll do 12:30 Friday.
All right, sounds good.
I think I can make that too, because I'm off.
All right.
All right, sounds good, LBL. Good to have you aboard.
All right, guys.
Yes.
All right, from Texas to the world, thank you, and God bless.
Peace.
Later.